Okay, before you start your worksheet that has you practice simplifying, I wanted to go over all that we've talked about and some things that we haven't yet talked about so that you can be successful. So this should be a review. When you are simplifying a fraction, whether it be a fraction that's under 1 or an improper fraction, you need to be fluent and fast with your greatest common factors, okay? So if we look at 6/21s, either way, if you're using the multiplication with canceling strategy or just the division strategy, you're going to need to know the GCF. Some people will be able to say, be able to recognize it right away. Others might need to write out all the factors, which is totally fine, just so that you don't miss any, right? So we can see by writing all of it out that our greatest common factor here is 3. So when we're thinking about the way to represent this with multiplication, 6 can be represented as the product of 3 and 2, and 21 can be represented as the product of 3 and 7. And so then we talked about how, because 3 over 3 is 1, you can cancel it out, right, because it's the same thing as saying 1 times 2/7, right, because this is 1. This can be canceled out, and so the simplified version of 6/21s is 2/7. So that is one way that involves using the GCF. The more practical way, the faster way, is just to divide your numerator and denominator by the greatest common factor, which we already found to be 3. So you would divide 6 by 3 and 21 by 3. 6 divided by 3 is 2. 21 divided by 3 is 7. Okay, so you get to the same place, but I do need you to be aware of why this works too, okay? Now, sometimes you'll run into a fraction, or in this case an improper fraction, where you can't really quickly see what the greatest common factor is. For example, I don't know what the greatest common factor is when I look at this right now. So when you have a numerator and denominator that are actually pretty large numbers, what I do first is I try to do a quick division of a common factor, but not the greatest common factor because I don't know it. So when I look at these two numbers, I know we've talked about it briefly, and if you glance over to the whiteboard in our room, there's a poster of divisibility rules. And so we talked about that cool divisibility rule with 3. It said that if all the digits in the number add up to be divisible by 3, then that number is divisible by 3. So let's check out 129. So let's add up these digits. 1 plus 2 plus 9 is 12, and hey, 12 is divisible by 3. So this should be divisible by 3. Okay. Now let's look down here at 36. 3 plus 6 is 9. 9 is divisible by 3, so 36 should be divisible by 3. Okay, so now we are able to, without having to list out all the factors and without having to think about the greatest common factor, we're able to trim this down to a little bit more reasonable number. So this is 43. 36 divided by 3 is 12. Okay, so that puts us in a better position to change from an improper fraction to a mixed number, because I can say more readily how many times 12 goes into 43 than I can how many times does 36 go into 129. So I know that 12 goes into 43 3 times, and that would bring me to 36. And then to count up from 36 to 43, let's see, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40. Let me try again. 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43. So that's 7 as your remainder. So this would be the simplified version of this improper fraction, okay? I hope you guys know that you cannot leave a number like this when you're being asked to simplify. This is not the simplest version. The simplest version is to put that number into a mixed number form, okay? But I was able to do that so quickly because I cut it down a little bit. I got it simpler first. The same thing goes right here for 64 and 24. immediately I should see that, and some of you might say, I know the GCF, it's 8, that's fine. But if you don't know that, you should pick up on the fact that these are both even numbers. And even numbers can be divisible by 2. So if I cut this in half and this in half, maybe I can work with them more easily, okay? So 24 in half is 12, and 64 in half is 32. And then it looks like even I can cut it down even further, because again, they're both even still. So I can continue to divide by 2. Well, 12 in half is 6, and 32 in half, let me think, is it 16? I think it is. Yeah, 16. And so this is a little bit more easy to work with. I can actually even go, you might notice they're even still. So divide by 2, still, because they're even, 8 thirds. And now I have to make this into a mixed number. 3 goes into 8. Let's see, 2 times with 2 left over. So this would be the simplified version of 64 24ths. So my point is that it's perfectly great to know the greatest common factor right off the bat, like we talked about here. But you can also use strategies to get the fraction simpler using your knowledge of common factors. And you could get it down to the simplest form in a couple more steps. So it's just something to keep in mind that you can use both of these strategies. The final thing I wanted to talk about was dealing with fractions that you should immediately see a special relationship between. So if you look at 5/15ths, 4/16ths, and 7/14ths, what I hope you would notice is that they have a relationship in terms of like the basic math facts, right? 15 in thirds is 5. 5 is 1/3 of 15, right? And let's see here, 16 divided by 4 is 4. So 4 is 1/4 of 16, and 14 divided by 2 is 7. So it's 1/2 of 14. So just to make that more clear, using our bar models for one of them, I said that 5 is 1/3 of 15. So if this whole thing is 15, one of these thirds would be 5, okay? And so I also said here that 4 is 1/4. One of these fourths is 4. So 4 is 1/4 of 16. And then here I said that, this one's more obvious, 7 is 1/2 of 14. And so when you see that relationship, you can automatically say, well, because 5 is 1/3 of 15, this is equal to 1/3, right? And because 4 is 1/4 of 16, this is 1/4. And because 7 is 1/2 of 14, this is 1/2. So there's this relationship here and here. Divide by 3 and 1/3. Divide by 4 and 1/4. And divide by 2 and 1/2. So that's something that I would expect you to pick up on quickly, okay? So just to go over what I'm looking for is, can you simplify using the GCF? Okay, can you immediately recognize the GCF? Or if you can't immediately see it, can you list out the factors like we did here and find it? Okay, that's one way to simplify. Another way is to continue to cut it down using your knowledge of common factors. Being that these are a little bit bigger numbers, I think it's more appropriate to use this strategy when the numbers are a little bigger, okay? And feel free to use that divisibility poster to figure out how to cut them down. And then lastly, in these special cases where you have the numerator being a unit fraction of the denominator, that's something that you can cut down right away, okay, rather than find the GCF. So I hope that you can use all three of these strategies on the worksheet I'm going to have you do.